There we go. We are live. Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. I'm your host this week, Charles Max Wood, and I'm talking to Ben Curtis. Ben, it's been a while since we've talked,
It's been a long time. Yeah. It's good to see you.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you too. And I remember talking about some of the open source stuff that you've done in the past. I remember when you and Star started Honey Badger.
hmm
Do you want to just introduce people to who you are and what you do? And
Sure. Sure. Well, people in the Ruby community might know me from Faker. That was a
Mhm.
gem that I started, let's see, back in 2007, long, long
Yep,
time ago. Or might know me from Rails Kits. That was a business that I ran for a few years
yep,
there. The SAS Rails Kit allowed people to start a SAS app with the building already enabled, and today there are other options that are similar, but that was I think the first one.
yep.
And then these days, of course, running Honey Badger. Been doing that for the past 11, 12 years or so, and love the Ruby community, love serving the Ruby community, and it's just been so much fun. It was really neat looking at the pictures. I didn't make it to Rails World, unfortunately, but I was looking at the pictures there, and I saw the little picture of the board where you could sign up where you started
hmm
using Rails. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, what was that for me? I think it was 2005. It was pre
Right.
1.0. Yeah, it
Oh,
was
wow.
good times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I talk to people who do Rails, and I don't talk to too many people who've been doing it longer than me anymore.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But you're one of them, so yeah, yeah. I picked it up 1.1.3, something like
hmm
that.
Yeah,
So
it's been a long road.
anyway, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I thought we could just catch up a bit, talk about Honey Badger, some of the stuff you're doing over there. You mentioned another project, Heya. We'll get into that. That's email campaigns. But yeah, let's just jump in and talk about Honey Badger for a minute. I think most people in the community are pretty familiar with Honey Badger or with things that do what Honey Badger does.
hmm
But do you want to just, for those who aren't familiar with it, just kind of explain what it is?
Sure, sure. So we do the main thrust of what we do is exception monitoring for your
Mm-hmm.
Rails apps. We of course support JavaScript and all the other languages too, but our bread and butter is Rails. We love Rails, and so that's our best supported platform. And imagine you're running your web app in production, and some exception happens. How do you know that happened? How do you know
Yep.
that a user encountered a problem? Well, you might look at your logs, but who's going to be watching logs all day, right? That's no fun. So what Honey Badger does is we plug into your app. We have a gem that you install, and if
Mm-hmm.
any exception happens, then that triggers a request to our API, and we collect that info for you, and then we give you an alert in Slack or in GitHub. We can create an issue for you automatically, things like that. And we let you know what happened, where it happened, and gives you the information you need to get in there and fix the problem really quick
Right.
and get back to what you want to be doing.
Yep.
Since we
Absolutely.
let's see, and since we launched Honey Badger, doing that back in the day, we've added a few other things like uptime monitoring and
Mm-hmm.
check-ins, so you can keep an eye on your cron jobs, make sure they don't die quietly. So basically, all the things that an app developer would want to know about their app is actually healthy and serving customers, we do that. And we're actually
Right.
coming out with a brand new feature pretty soon. We can talk about more if you want, which we haven't talked about publicly yet. So uh, coming coming up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So Insights, since Insights is our new feature, just launched into preview about an hour ago. Actually, we
Ooh.
haven't announced it anywhere. We're kind of doing it quietly. We had some alpha testers checking it out, but yeah, no publicity yet aside from this episode. So
Yeah.
Insights is a structured logging kind of thing. So you've probably used a structured logging kind of solution before, where you send your logs somewhere like I don't know Papertrail or maybe
Mm-hmm.
New Relic or something like that,
Right.
and you do some analysis. You can go through your logs and do some queries and things like that. So we're doing that, and we're pretty excited about integrating Insights into the rest of Honey Badger. So what we're doing is we're exposing all your Honey Badger data, so all your errors, all your uptime checks, all the things that are happening in this one queryable UI, along with your application logs. You can send it to structured logs, and so you can track all the page requests, and you can do some fun things with metrics out of your logs. So let's say you want to see what your average response time is. Well, we can allow you to query that really quickly once you start sending your logs to us, and then do some charting on that, and it's pretty exciting. I think a lot of customers will enjoy having that information right next to all the other Honey Badger information.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. It's funny because I could probably name a dozen of your competitors without really breaking a sweat, right? As
Hmm.
far as like the error monitoring stuff. And most of them have opted for performance monitoring as a second feature as opposed to
Right.
the logging and stuff. And, I mean, I've been doing Rails we talked about this for quite a long time. And it does, I think, log how long some of the requests and parts of your requests take. So you
Yep.
could get some of that data out of something like
Sure.
the structure logging, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And of course, over time, we'll be allowing you to instrument things and send more detailed
Hmm.
stats. And there's nothing stopping you from logging, whatever you want to log,
Right.
including, user sign up counts or, whatever metric might make sense on the business side of your application, right? So it's not just about performance monitoring. It's not just about the logs, even. It's about what are the events that are happening in your app that are interesting to you. And you can query them, you can track them, you can build
Hmm.
metrics around them, build some dashboards. So we're pretty excited about that. We're looking forward to having our customers who have tried it so far love it, and so we got the good early response to it. So I think people are going to enjoy that.
Awesome. That's very cool. Now, one thing that I'm kind of curious about, I remember when you guys launched Honey Badger, there were already a number of solutions out there,
Hmm.
and this is something that I'm always curious to hear is what's the story behind it, right? And what made you decide, hey, there are like 8 of these out there right now. We need a ninth one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That that comic about the formats, right? The protocols. We need another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so back when we launched Honey Badger, this was what 2011, 2012 in that neighborhood.
Hmm.
There was only one that we knew about, and that was Airbrake.
Okay.
And Star and I were working together at a startup, and we were using Airbrake, and it was fine. But one day we had an error that happened in our application, and we sent the payload to Airbrake as per usual.
Hmm.
Went into the Airbrake UI, and there was no detailed information about that error. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird. We waited a little bit, and still nothing. And so we contacted support to see what had gone wrong with
Hmm.
getting this data in there. And I think the message I sent was something along the lines of, hey, we reported error to your API and we see that there's no data in there. Can you help us out, get this data? And the response that I got back was, yeah, we received your error and there's no data in the API that we have. Sorry. And I'm like,
Oh man.
there's like no information in this response. You just told me back what I told you. And that just frankly just made me mad. I'm like, you know what? I deserve better than this. And so I turned to Star and I'm like, you know what? This is terrible. We can do better than that. And so let's do better than that. And so that's the origin story. That's why we got started building Honey Badger. We just got annoyed one day that Airbrake wasn't working like we wanted it to. So,
That that's
but
funny.
yeah, so we thought, building a copycat product is one thing. Anybody can do that. But we felt like what had happened with Airbrake, unfortunately, was
Uh-huh.
that Thoughtbot, who had originally built it, they had sold it. And so
Yes.
at this point, Airbrake wasn't being run by the original creators. It was being run by, I'll just leave the parties unnamed, but a company that just didn't care so much about it. They were just
Hmm.
kind of in maintenance mode, and the customer support was, not top of the line, and the product had kind of just stagnated. And so we thought, you know what? Not only can we build a better product, we can build a better service. We can provide developers better support than this, right? And so that's what really motivated us to build Honey Badger.
Right. That's interesting. And yeah, I have to admit, I don't know all the timelines for all the other competitors that are out there. And it seems like some of the ones I can think of started in JavaScript or .NET or something else,
Yeah.
right? And then may have expanded their way into Ruby where, yeah, Airbrake and
Rollbar was
Honey
around
Badger,
at the time,
right?
and Sentry was around at the time, but Sentry was in
Hmm.
the Python community pretty much,
Right,
and Rollbar was in the Ruby community pretty strongly, but
right,
we just hadn't used them for whatever reason. Yeah,
right,
so and since then, of course, more have sprung up, but and
right.
some have gone away.
Yeah,
But it's
that's the
been
way it goes.
yeah, it's
Yep.
been fun.
Very cool. So I'm kind of curious then as well. So you're putting Honey Badger together. You're starting to, solve some of these problems that you had.
Mhm.
What I'm always curious, like the growth as far as like the capabilities of the system, and then the growth as a business. Like, how did you manage all of that? Like, were you and Star just, you know, it seems like from the outside it all kind of went naturally, and I'm sure there were hiccups along the
Sure.
way. I mean, that's my experience talking to most people. So yeah.
yeah. Sure, there were some detours and some side trips along the way. He, like I said, he and I were working together. We were at a startup that was not
Uh-huh.
related to tech in any way, and it got so we just started this on the side. We felt like it was something fun, and we've been wanting to do a project for a while. We just couldn't come up with a good idea, and so this was the idea, and so we were ready to go.
Right.
Um, and as we were working on it, like after a few months, we got it nights and weekends. We got it launched, and right away, people started signing up. It was pretty cool, and then it started getting kind of busy. And it's an
Hmm.
ops heavy kind of service, right? We
Right.
can't go down, right? Because if you're having a bad day, we can't have a bad day.
Right.
And so it pretty soon became apparent that we were not going to be able to like keep our day job and do Honey Badger, which was actually the
Hmm.
original goal, like because we enjoyed what we were doing.
Right.
Uh, but we weren't quite ready to dive into it full time because the revenue wasn't there. Like we had customers, but not that many.
Right.
And it was funny when we got started. Like when we were shopping around for ideas, the one thing we had two criteria. We didn't want to be in the critical path of someone's work, and
Right.
we didn't want to. Uh, we didn't want to have to leave our jobs before and basically go back to consulting, which we did uh,
Right.
before the revenue was there for us to work full time on it. And neither one of those criteria came true. We ended up being in the critical path, right, with an ops heavy business, and we had to leave our jobs before we were ready
Right.
to, and so we had to go back to consulting and freelancing for a while. But that was that's fun. That's fine. I mean, we just enjoyed the idea so much
Yeah.
we couldn't not do it, right? So. We did have, speaking of back to the APM thing, we did have a big detour at one point where we decided, hey, let's take a look at doing metrics. And after we had gotten
Uh-huh.
the initial product out there, we thought, yeah, that's a logical next step. And we tried it, and our implementation was not very good, and most of our customers didn't care about it. But we had enabled it by
Right.
default in the gym, and so we were getting a ton of data. Our systems were not dealing with it well, and nobody cared.
Right.
And so I was like, well, that was a bad idea, and so we had to turn that off. Like we just had to revert that, and we've been kind of allergic to the idea of metrics ever since then. So this insights thing is, kind of we were a little gun shy going into it, but we felt it
Right.
was so interesting that we had to give it another shot, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but other than that, like the growth has been steady. The customers have always been glowing in their reviews, and so there's
Hmm.
never been a time where we're like, oh, this is just not working, or we got to throw it away, or we got to. Thankfully, like ever since we
Right.
got started, it's been steady, consistent growth. It's been nice.
Very, very cool. So has most of your growth then been pretty organic as far as just people talking about Honey Badger, or have you run any major campaigns or anything else to try and get people to adopt it?
Yeah, in the early days, like organic word of mouth was everything. We'd
Right.
be on Twitter and hanging out with people. We'd be at conferences, and every time we meet with someone, they'd be like, "Oh, you're only three people? That's crazy. It feels like you're a company
Hmm.
of 20 or something." So we always punch above our weight in that regard. It's been nice. Uh, and one of the things we did early on was we knew we were targeting developers. We wanted to sell directly to
Hmm.
developers and not CTOs or whatever up there on the top of the chart. And so we made it really appealing also to freelancers because that's our
Right.
background. That's where all three of us came from. And so we designed the user sign up so it'd be pretty easy for you to invite someone, as a
Hmm.
as a as your client, right? If you're a freelancer, or to
Right.
obviously bring on a new team member if you join a team. And so what we found is that a developer would try us out and introduce us to a client. Then that client would get a new freelancer who would then be introduced to Honey Badger, who would then introduce us to another client, right? So yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
makes
awesome.
sense.
Yeah, yeah. So that worked out really well. And then over time, we started, doing conferences, and these days we do a
Hmm.
lot of content, which is great. We love that, and we do podcast sponsorships, which we really enjoy. And it's fun connecting with podcasters, and we don't do conferences a whole lot these days because, well, COVID kind of errored that whole thing. I guess it's
Right.
coming back now, but that was definitely definitely had to adjust to that thing. But yeah, word of mouth is still really good for us. Still, we have people bringing us to new.
Hmm.
We have a during our sign up process, we have a box you can type in like, how'd you hear about us, or what, why are you using us, or whatever. And pretty regularly we get people saying, oh, this is the third time I'm setting you up with another client, or I'm
Right.
now at my fourth company and I'm bringing you with me. So
Hmm.
yeah, works out really well.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you're talking about the word of mouth and and selling to developers. I mean, some of the other companies that come to me, they want to know how many CTOs and,
Right.
managers we have listening to us. And it's kind of hard to know that, from a podcast. I mean, I've sent out surveys periodically, and I can kind of guess from the, few hundred people that fill it in, right? It's like, okay, well, I got 2% of my audience to fill it out or something, right? And so assuming the rest of them look more or less the same, but
Hmm.
um I mean, I don't know if you can know that, but yeah, I love the kind of the approach of having an open, hey, I tried it, I liked it, I use it again. Somebody else tries it, they like it, they use it again. Um, so as time's gone on and you've grown, and um, I mean, what have been the challenges as you've moved forward, both technical and business?
I think on the business side, one of the challenges has been that we are not funded, right? We are
Hmm.
bootstrapped, and we do have funded competitors like Sentry who have
Yep.
taken on a lot of money, right?
Right.
And they probably do sell to those CTOs because that's what you can do when you have a sales team, which we don't have, right?
Yeah.
So on the business
Well, and
side,
I've been to some Microsoft conferences and other places where they have a huge presence because they have they can go and drop the big money to
yep,
be a
yep,
big presence at the conference.
yep, yeah. So that's definitely a challenge. Like you just can't compete, toe to toe when you had that kind of
Hmm.
difference. So we've had to find ways that are more guerrilla tactics and that sort of thing.
Right.
So that's been one challenge. It's been slower than it could have been because we didn't have that war chest. But that was a conscious decision that we made, and those are the trade-offs that we were
Right.
willing to take. On a technical side, uh, I think one challenge was just dealing with the scale, like dealing with the traffic.
Hmm.
And initially, we were like in a colo facility where we were leasing servers,
Right.
and we eventually got to the point where we just outstripped their abilities to support us in a timely fashion. Like if something went down, it
Hmm.
took too long basically to get a response.
Right.
And so we've had a big migration over to AWS several years ago, and that
Hmm.
made a huge difference in the business. And I think that allowed us to do a lot of the automating of resilience, recovery,
Right.
scaling. Like there's just a whole lot of automation that goes into it, which I think helped us quite a bit to be able to keep that team size down while keeping the service
Hmm.
up. So I think, yeah, those are kind of two of the big things that have shaped the nature of the business over the years.
Right. It's interesting too, because you're talking about that, and I think that's a decision that a lot of companies make at a certain point. They get to a certain inflection point where it really starts to make sense.
Yeah.
And then they either invest in moving to a cloud, or these days moving to Kubernetes and
Right.
having the self-healing, all the magic that happens there. Of course, Kubernetes is kind of a beast to figure out and set up, but AWS is too in some
Right.
ways. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um
It's a whole lot of work, and
yeah.
it's the reason we didn't start out that way. It's because it's like, well, we don't
Right.
even know if this service is gonna last more than
Right.
a month, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, once you get to a certain point, then it makes sense to dive into that complexity and take
Yeah.
that productivity hit to spend all that time to figure that out. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So one other thing that's interesting is, and I talked to David at the Rails World, and he mentioned that they had moved everything back off of AWS
Yeah.
for Basecamp and Hey. Is that something that's even on your radar, or is there some trigger point where you start thinking about those kinds of things, and it's just, hey, that's not our problem right now, so we're not worried about it?
I'm an old Christie sysadmin, so I love the idea of moving back to a stack of servers and having a rack.
Uh
And
huh.
I mean, I love that stuff. It used to do that all the time. But I think that in our case, we do have times where we see 10x, 20x, 50x traffic comes in within minutes, right?
Uh huh.
And then 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, it drops back down to our baseline. And
Right.
we don't ever have to think about that because everything just
Right.
auto scales, right? We don't even
Mm-hmm.
have to care. So that would make me nervous if we went back to, having to go back to the forecasting, having to go back to the planning. Okay, how much headroom do we need to have? Doing
Right.
all those things. I actually prefer to just pay Amazon, then all my automation. I don't have
Right.
to worry about it, right? So, yeah, I get the appeal, and the old sysadmin in me loves the idea, but I think for our situation, it makes sense to stay where we can scale and not have to even
Mm-hmm.
think about it.
Yeah. Well, um, and what you're saying makes sense. The thing that comes to my mind is that both Basecamp and Hey are UI centric
Mm-hmm.
apps,
Mm-hmm.
and yours is an API centric app. And so where you're going to get traffic depending on what's going on in anybody's app or a lot of people's apps, right? Your
Yep.
your situation, yeah, it makes sense what you're saying, as opposed to with them, I think they can forecast it fairly easily, and they can forecast their growth and then just make sure that they're accounting for it moving forward. And if they overshoot it or undershoot it a little bit, they can just adjust it later. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
And I think one of the critical things there, if you're looking at that, putting on the old sysadmin hat, and you're doing that forecasting, I think, and David talked about this in one of his blog posts
Hmm.
about it, is that you have to have that really good relationship with that vendor, right? If
Yeah.
you're going with Dell, right, and you've got to be able to get new servers quickly. And
Yep.
back in the day, could take you days or weeks, and like you
Yes.
just can't do that, right? You got to have the contract that says I can have new hardware in 4 hours or whatever it
Yep.
is, right? So a lot of problems that have been solved by the cloud, that if you move out of it, you have to go back and okay, you have to make
Hmm.
plans for those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're telling me, that reminds me of the days, the good old days, I guess, when I was in college. I worked in the data center at the university I attended, and yeah, when I worked in the data center, and then I worked on the server management provisioning team, and yeah, putting in a new server when I started on that team was a major thing, right?
Yeah.
And we had our own little room in the back of the data center, and you'd swap disks, and then we got fancy and we had it on a network boot, and so all we had to do was tell it to boot off the other machine, and then we could kind of monitor it remotely. And then eventually we were using VMware, right? And so then it was, hey, look, we've got hardware and we've got virtual machines running on the hardware, right? And so provisioning a new machine at that point was literally just click, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
I need another one of these, and you were, and then you just made sure it had all the current stuff on it. And so, yeah, the speed and the need to be able to handle that stuff, it just, yeah, it changed everything.
Yeah,
So
it's so much nicer today having Kubernetes, having being able to, you could have all those servers just waiting, right? And then you can
yeah,
provision your VMs or your Docker images as you need.
yeah,
Yeah, I would love to be in a place where we could do that and save that coin, because Amazon is not cheap. It
right.
is true. But I also like being able to sleep and not have to worry about a 100x spike coming
Right.
in.
Yeah. So you were talking about how it was just the three of you for a while.
Yeah.
What does your company look like now?
Today, let's see. So Star left the company a year and a half or so ago. We
Uh-huh.
purchased Star's shares. Star was ready to do some other things.
Hmm.
And so now Josh and I are the remaining co-founders. And then we've also hired, let's see, we have 3 employees now. So
Oh,
a
wow.
gargantuan company of 5. Yeah. We have several contractors that work for us part-time. And of course, I mentioned our blog, as we do
Hmm.
for marketing. We have contractors writing those articles for us.
Yep.
So we have quite the army of contractors, but yeah, just 5 employees today.
Hmm.
Our goal has always been to maximize revenue per employee, and
Yeah.
we're liking that.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Um, what do you do then to maximize, profit per employee?
Yeah, it's a lot about the automation. So we
Hmm.
don't have humans reacting to things, right? We have computers
Right.
reacting to things, and then on the customer support, like we don't have a customer support person. Like all of us do customer support. You're always talking to a
Okay.
developer. And we obviously, as developers, we don't really want to be doing customer support on a regular basis. We want to be like
Right.
writing code, right? So we take a lot of time to try and document all the things. If we get questions about, whatever, I need to do X, we try to document that so that we never have that question again.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's helped quite a bit. So the automation, documenting all the things, and then I think using a framework like Rails helps, right?
Hmm.
Because there's so much done for you, right?
Right.
Uh, that you don't have to have like so David was talking about the one person framework, right? At,
Right.
at, at the conference,
Yep.
and I mean we're not one
Which
person,
I'm
right?
totally in love with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But Rails gives us that ability to we can if we have a new feature that we want to deploy, like we don't have to have the mobile team coordinating with the front end team, coordinating with the back end team, right? We've
Right.
got one person who can do that, all that thing for that feature, right?
Yep.
that's allowed us, yeah, to have a lot of
Yeah.
runway on people versus
Yeah.
hiring out for all kinds of things.
So, do you have a mobile component to Honey Badger?
We do, yeah. We actually have two mobile apps. We have one for iOS and one for Android, done by a contractor,
Okay,
and
that makes
he's worked
sense.
with us for wow, several years now.
Mhm. So, if you need anything changed on there, you just hire it out. That
Yep,
makes sense.
yep.
Um, so as Rails has changed, because Rails has changed a little bit since 2011.
It's a lot.
Um, what how has that affected things? You just roll with it, or yeah,
Well,
how do you roll with it?
for on the ecosystem side, for a while there, we were getting a little nervous, right? When
Uh-huh.
Node came out and people were just like, "Oh, Rails is dead," just like Ruby's dead,
Oh
we were like,
yeah,
"Well,
I still
uh,
hear that from people.
right?
And then I went to Rails World, and I'm like, this is pretty vibrant
Yeah, this is not dead."
place
Yeah.
for it's not dead, right?
So for a few years there, we were like, "Wow, do we need to just like switch our whole product to just focus on JavaScript?" It's like, "No, we're going to stay the course. We love Rails, and we love Rails developers." So recently, I think there has been a feeling of an upsurge, reinvigorating, I think, of the Rails
Hmm.
community and the Ruby community. So that's been nice to see on our end, and we feel like, hey, we're vindicated that we stayed the
Yep.
course, and like we're focused on web developers and specifically people who are doing the full stack kind of thing with both
Hmm.
Rails and probably JavaScript on the front end. Um, and on the back end side, like the continual march of progress of Rails has been nice. Like
Hmm.
it's fun whenever there's a new Rails release. We go in and we see what we need to update, right? And we're like, oh, we can get rid of that gem, and we can get rid
Right.
of that patch, and that monkey patch can go away
Uh-huh.
now. So it's been nice staying on that and seeing that consistent drumbeat. Especially because we use Postgres and very heavily,
Uh-huh.
right? So things like windowing functions and the stuff that's been added over the years to Rails, and so you can take away those hacks, and this batch has
Yep.
been super nice.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because I've been upgrading top end devs. Um, used to be devchat.tv for the people who've been listening for a minute. But yeah, so I built it on Rails 6.1 and then I just kind of left it there. And so I've been upgrading it. And yeah, it's like I'm pulling that out, and that out, and that out, and that
Yeah.
out. I think I cried tears of joy when Webpacker went away.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's just been this amazing march forward. And yeah, I was concerned that it's like, all right, am I going to have to go and pick up, I don't know, Phoenix or,
Hmm.
Express or, the guys that built Remix are friends of mine. And so it's like, am I going to be a JavaScript, you know, nope. I'm pretty happy where I am. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and there have been places where we started with Rails, but then we decided it's just not performant enough.
yeah.
Like our API endpoints, right? That thing
Hmm.
that you talk to when you first submit an error. So that's been is just a rack app, right? So we started with
Oh yeah.
Rails, and then we extracted that stuff out. And I think David has a blog post from several years ago where he talks about you might have some hot spots where you take out and replace with something. So we've done that, and that's worked out
Hmm.
super well. I've been very
Yep.
happy with that. These days, we've been dabbling a little more in Go,
Hmm.
as we've been, replacing little bits of our pipeline that could use a little bit more efficiency. Because I mean, to be honest, like Ruby is relatively slow compared to Go, but
Right.
uh, but still, like our customer facing app is 100% Rails, and like wouldn't give up that productivity for anything.
Right. So I have to ask, why did you name it Honey Badger?
So back in that time period when we were thinking about this product, to, we had the Honey Badger video on YouTube was popular at the time. So the Honey Badger meme where
Uh-huh.
it's Randall and he's narrating the
Right.
yeah the Honey Badger don't care. Yeah, that's why it's named Honey Badger. It started out just as that was our code name for the project,
Uh-huh.
and but then eventually we it was time to launch and we couldn't think of a better name, so Honey Badger just stuck. And so as a result, like all of our code names are memes, and so we built a gem called Incoming, and it was based on the Incoming meme, and Heya was another one. So it's like it's kind of
Right.
fun. Like we're carrying that tradition forward, and we have it's hilarious. I have two kids who are well, college age,
Uh-huh.
and they just moan and groan every time I throw out a meme from 10 years ago or 8 years ago. They're like, oh, that's so dead. You need to quit that. But it's it's
Yeah.
it's fun making them making them
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. My oldest two are 17 and 16. And yeah. Yeah. I routinely embarrass them. I
Yeah.
embarrass them when it's just us,
Well, of
right? It's
course,
like,
yeah, yeah. It's one of the privileges of dadhood is that you get to
yeah.
make them cringe. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty funny though, because they're almost looking around like, did anyone hear that? It's like, it's just us, right? Anyway. Um, but yeah. So, uh, yeah. Well, let's talk about Heya for a minute.
Yeah.
And, yeah, do you want to kind of explain what that is and where that came from?
Yeah, yeah. So we love open source at Honey Badger. Obviously, we use Rails,
Mm-hmm.
and everything we do is open source. Linux, Nginx, you name it. Postgres, we got it.
Yeah.
Um, and we've one of our goals has been like as we have time to contribute back to the community because I mean that's why I started Faker. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I was so enriched by open source. I was a
Right.
Perl and PHP guy back in the day that I want to give back and I want to contribute. And unfortunately, we haven't had as much time as we'd like because we're a small company and we're busy. But Heya is one of the things that's come out of the work that we do. So it's a gem that you can use that helps you with doing email campaigns. So if you think about a SaaS, you have a user sign up, and there's some probably a trial period, right, where you want them to try out the different features, or if they
Mm-hmm.
haven't done X, you want to push them to that so they can be more engaged. And it's a common marketing tactic to give them a sequence of emails as they're having their trial. So here's your
Mm-hmm.
welcome email, and here's your get your team onboarded email, and et cetera.
Right.
And when we built Heya, one of our frustrations was that there were tools that did this for you, but they were all like UI, like drag and drop or clicky wizards or whatever, right? And you could define,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
I've used Drip and I've used
right,
ConvertKit and
yep,
Active Campaign.
exactly,
And yeah, I mean, just to reiterate some of this pain, yeah, some of it's the drag and drop, click, add a tag, whatever.
hmm
And some of it's just that um I can't even explain it. It's okay. Well, I'm gonna go do all this WYSIWYG work, right? And it still doesn't quite. It feels like somebody cobbled it together
yeah,
because I'm just whatever.
yeah,
And then the other thing is that it's like, okay, well, I want this to go to everybody, and I want these to go to people under these circumstances,
hmm
and and so then I'm Zapiering the thing together, right? It's
right,
like,
yep,
okay, Stripe, send a webhook to me, and a webhook to Zapier, and a webhook to this other thing, and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And the other issue is, you may not care depending on your business, but and we cared about sending customer data out to these third parties, right? We didn't want to,
oh yeah,
you know,
mm-hmm,
this the syncing. Like we used to use Intercom as our customer support and our
uh-huh.
on-site chat, and like you send your customer data out there, and if you want to filter on a particular thing, you got to make sure you send that. You got to tag the user that way, and that's brittle, right? Things can break, and we just got
Right,
kind of frustrated with the idea of, well, we got to manage some customer data here and some customer data there, and
yep,
and so Heya was like, all right, look, if we could just define our email campaigns in code in the application, we've got our database right there, so we don't have to send the customer data anywhere, and then we can
right,
redefine whatever, like we want to send this email if they haven't logged in 3 days or whatever. Like that kind of logic is really simple if it's in code and it's in your app, right? So that was the genesis for Heya.
huh,
And so
very
that's
nice,
yeah, that's what we use to send out our drip emails to our customers
mm-hmm,
when they sign up. And yeah, it's pretty neat having that right there in code. I
yeah.
like that.
So one other thing that I'm just kind of curious on, right? Because I feel like I'm getting back into the marketing game, and I'm not going to go through all the stuff that happened in between. But one thing that I'm curious about is that we've we've started doing some of this outreach, right? And we have an email list right now. It's in Zoho campaigns, I think,
hmm
is what we're using. And I'd like to start doing more newsletter stuff. Is that something that I would run through Heya, or do I want to use a tool like that?
You could use Heya for that. It's not really designed for that, and
Okay,
we don't use it for that. We use ConvertKit. I think we use
ConvertKit.
ConvertKit. We've
Yeah,
gotten through. I think we used Drip at one time, and I think it's ConvertKit today. So like newsletter campaigns, still I think work better in those tools that are specifically built for that.
right,
Whereas Hey is more about you got your customers, and that's another part. I guess there's are the people who are part of your marketing universe, that aren't necessarily
Hmm.
customers, right? Those would be better
Right.
handled by Drip or whatever tool
Okay.
versus your actual customers that you want to send,
Hmm.
particular emails to. And then,
Right.
the other thing is like if you we use Postmark for our email provider for our delivery
Uh-huh.
provider, and they have pretty strict rules about what kinds of emails you can send. You can send transactional emails, and you can send to people who have a relationship with you, but they do not want marketing emails on their platform, right?
Right.
So we can't be using the same mechanism, for our in-app emails than as we do
Hmm.
for marketing to our whole marketing list, right? So
Right.
yeah, I think it's good to have that separate. Although
Mhm.
at one time we did want to build a tool that would kind of partner with Heya basically and do that marketing side.
Hmm.
We just have never gotten around to it.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, I use SparkPost, I think,
Mm-hmm.
right now for my email stuff. And yeah, so what they do is they're mostly concerned with reputation. So if they start getting a whole bunch of spam
Yep.
hits, right, then they'll come back to you and say, hey, we're going to turn you off. One thing that's interesting, though, is that I've used at least 2 CRM systems, which are specifically for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That now, granted, they are customer relations, so you shouldn't be sending cold emails out through them generally, right? You should be sending targeted emails out of your inbox, and then right. So yeah, a lot marketing caveats,
Right. Right.
up and down the board, but um yeah, one of the CRMs I used, they wanted you to set up and use a sending system like that, and if you wanted to use Mailgun, then they would help you set it up.
Mm-hmm.
And um, yeah, I had my CRM emails shut off because you know
Yeah.
enough people mark stuff as spam, and
Yep.
it's like, okay, well, you need to go clean up your list and jump through all these hoops.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're doing that through like Active Campaign or one of these others, right? Unless you're just really abusing it. I have a really old email list, and so I've gotten a few. I've had Zoho come back to me and tell me, "Hey, look, your campaigns are triggering enough of these, right? You need to clean
Mm-hmm.
it up." But most of those emails are emails that people legitimately gave to me. It's just been a while since I emailed them, and
Yep.
so I'm running into that. So anyway, it is interesting to kind of see the dichotomy there and go, okay, we're going to do the marketing here and we're going to do the other here.
Yeah, I would say even if your email provider is not particularly strict about that, I think it's still a good idea to keep
Yeah.
all that marketing stuff separate from your app stuff. Because
Yeah.
in our case, like if our app emails got shut down, those are
Yeah.
the emails that we're sending to our customers when they have an error, right? So
Right.
that has to work.
Yeah. The deliverability has to be good. And so
Exactly.
the email server reputation is going to matter.
Yep.
And so
Exactly.
you're sending the stuff that they're going to open.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
that
And
makes sense.
surprisingly enough, I mean, surprised me anyway. We do have people mark our emails as spam sometimes, which is just the weirdest thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you're an active user of Honey Badger. You actively opted
Right.
into this thing, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often, but it's just weird.
Yeah. So what exactly does Heya give you? Because I mean, I'm assuming it gives you some UI to manage these drip campaigns and stuff.
No, no, there's no UI at all. It's all code.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. It's so basically it just gives you an easy way to manage. You know, for example, like we have a freemium, like I have just so you
Uh-huh.
can have a free plan forever, right? But we also have paid trials, right? And the onboarding experience that you have is slightly different between those two. We're not
Right.
going to send certain messages to those free users that we're going to send to the people who are in a trial that might be expiring
Hmm.
soon, right? So in Heya, we can make those kind of logic branches very easy, and say, okay, this email sequence goes to these customers, and these other customers get this other one, right? So
Okay.
that's really what it's about, is that maximum flexibility. But yeah, it's all defined. It's in your models. It's just right
Okay.
there in your Ruby code.
So I'm just trying to imagine what this looks like, and I'm kind of thinking of something that's like a set of jobs and a mailer or
Yep.
something, or
Yep, that's basically it. Yeah, it uses the same, action mailer. It uses whatever delivery
an
medium for
active
your app
job.
emails. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, and basically the idea there's no UI because it's not a
Hmm.
marketing thing. We're not, and
Right.
well, it's also kind of just our opinions about things. As Honey Badger's opinions is like we don't care to track clicks of emails. We don't
Right.
care to track
Okay.
open rates. Like those things we don't pay attention
Right.
to. Um, so we're not because we're not marketers. But also we feel like, hey, if we're only going to we're actually pretty bad about sending emails. We don't send enough, compared to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other services out there because we feel like developers don't want to have their time wasted, right? And so we're
Right.
only going to send emails that we think are useful, and if and we don't want to do tracking. Like we don't want pixels in
Right.
our emails and things like that. So that's just kind of our like philosophy coming through
Mm-hmm.
in the gym is like, yeah, we're not going to provide that
Yeah.
because we don't believe in that.
Well, and not having the pixels and not having the tracking in your email, that helps deliverability too.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it's I can kind of see my way to that. Sometimes it is nice to get those numbers, but
true.
if you're not
Yeah,
worried about them, yeah,
I mean, yeah,
if they're not actionable for you,
we miss it sometimes, and especially our marketing person. He would love to have those numbers, but it's always a trade off, right? What are you getting, and what are you giving
yep,
up? And in this case, it just felt like it wasn't worth it for us.
yep. No, that makes sense. So, is it a Rails engine then that you just install, or?
Yeah, yeah. You just add it as a gem, and you um, there's a generator that you can use
Mm-hmm.
to get your first campaign started, and just walks you through, like it shows you the kind of config. But it's basically just um, each campaign class has like what are the it's a block. What are the rules like, and it
Mm-hmm.
passes in the here's the user, and then so you can hit whatever method you want on that user to see does this user qualify for this campaign or not.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah,
That sounds really handy. I might be using that next week after I finish the overhaul on Top End Devs.
that sounds good.
Well,
Yeah, it's
it does make a lot of sense in the sense of, hey, you just signed up. Here's right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So.
it's fun to be able to what's that? The sell your sawdust kind of thing. I think is the
Mm-hmm.
phrase where the byproducts of the work that you do. Like obviously this is not a moneymaker for us. Although when we initially thought about releasing it, we thought, oh, we could sell licenses to this, people would buy it. And then after a while, it's like, nah, that's too much of a distraction. There's not enough
Yep.
interest. This is not going to set the world on fire. Let's just put it out there. And so I think that was the right call. It's nice to be able to just,
Yeah.
and it's not like we have to make money on it. Like we're making money on our
Right.
business, right? And so this is just one of those sawdust things. It's like, oh, this is a
Mm-hmm.
cool thing we built for ourselves, and I think the world would like it too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and you said that it was a distraction, and I think it's interesting. As I've kind of gone through my business journey, yeah, a lot of times it's not that it wouldn't make money or that it wouldn't make enough money. It's that it pulls that attention off of the things that are going to move the needle in more important ways in the rest of the business.
Yeah,
And yeah, and yeah, I'm a big fan of the open source thing anyway. And so yeah,
yeah,
unless it's my main thing, right? You're not gonna open source Honey Badger, but yeah, you know, this side stuff, yeah, it makes total sense.
right.
So cool. Well, is there anything else new going on in your life, or anything else that you want to bring up and let people know about?
No, I think that's it. Like we've been heads down on this Insights product for several months. We've got some other obviously we've got a continual roll on
Mhm.
features at Honey Badger. We always like to build things and just get them out there. Like we had this recent we have a set of features coming out soon for our status pages
Mhm.
option, which basically if you've used Atlassian status page or one of the other providers, it's pretty much that, right? We show you the status of your uptime checks and
Mhm.
your that's what's going on there. And so we've been adding little features here and there about bring it up to parity with some of our competitors. And we had this idea, we're like, oh, let's make this big release where we'll have all these features and we'll just do this marketing push. And then the other day, I'm like, you know what? Scratch that. Let's just push them out there because it's nice to ship, right? And that's just
Mhm.
what we love. We love to do at Honey Badger, just ship new
Oh
stuff. And I
yeah.
think that just brings a lot of energy, to the developer, to the customers. Uh,
Mhm.
so, so yeah, so there'll be a continual role, but we're pretty excited about getting this new big chunk of work out there that we've been spending a lot of time on.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and roll into picks. I guess before we do picks, what's your Twitter and GitHub and other places where people can find you?
Sure, sure. Let's see, I'm Stimpy on GitHub and Twitter, STYMPY. Don't do a whole lot of Twittering these days. I've mostly moved over to Mastodon. So I'm
Okay.
at Ben Curtis at Hachyderm over there. You can find me on Twitter, and I think you can follow me over from Mastodon over there. But I respond everywhere.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump into picks here real quick. I'll go ahead and go first, since you haven't been on for a while. Maybe you're out of practice.
Yeah.
But I've got a couple of picks. So the first pick I have, I always do a board game pick, and lately, yeah, it kind of came out of Avdi doing his beer picks way back in the day, and yeah, I've really gotten into board games lately. Actually, very tempted to do a board game podcast, just talk about what board games I'm playing and what I like, and bring some of my friends on, or see if I can get some of the game designers on or whatever. But anyway, so my friend he's part owner in a game store, board game store, and they have two locations. They have one out in Eagle Mountain, Utah, and one in American Fork, Utah. And I live right in the middle of them, and he lives around the corner from me. So anyway, so there's a game conference next weekend in Provo, and so he's recruited me and my wife the last few years. Not this year, because my daughter's having her tonsils out on Friday, but so we're gonna baby the baby kind of thing. Right. Anyway, but yeah, so I'm going, and so I've been learning the games that we're demoing, because the game store does a corner where they show people how to play, usually 6 games. And so yeah, so the game that I've been picking on the shows lately is Acropolis. It's Akropolis. It's a relatively new game, and it's really, really simple game. Board Game Geek has it rated at 1.79 weight. 2.0 weight is kind of a casual gamer, right? It's just hard enough to be interesting, but not so complicated that you have to play it 3 or 4 times to be able to figure it out. And what you do is you start with just one tile, and the tile has 3 hex spaces on it. And all the tiles are that size. And so then what you do is you build your city by placing more tiles connected to the tile that you have. And you can place them next to a tile, or you can place them on top of tiles. If you can place it completely on top of 3 other hex spaces, but it has to bridge between 2 tiles, right? So you can't put it directly over another tile. And then there are different colors, and the colors all score differently. And so like the red ones had to be on the edge, the yellow ones had to be not touching other yellows, the blue ones, you got a point for every one of them in the largest cluster of blues you had, right? And there are green ones, purple ones. The green ones all just counted for every one you had. Purple ones were if you completely surrounded it, right? So if it wasn't on an edge, then you could count it. And then if you place it on top, it counts for 2 or 3 or 4, however many levels up you get, right? And then you get, so when you pick your tile, if you don't want to pick the first one, then you give up a token to get the second one, or 2 tokens to get the third one. And yeah, anyway, so you just take turns pulling tiles and putting them into your city. And then whatever your score is in that color times the number of stars in that color, that's your score, and you just add it up, right? So it's relatively simple. Yeah, it's really fun, because every time you play, since you're drafting different tiles and you're taking different approaches, maybe you don't want to compete with the other guy who's got 6 red tile or 6 red stars, because he's going to grab every red one he can get and put it on the edge, right? So maybe you go for yellows, or maybe you go for a mix. But it's really, really fun, and so I've really enjoyed it. This is probably so 3 of the games, like, I enjoyed them, but I wouldn't go buy them, right? So, but this one's probably my second favorite out of the 6. I've really, really enjoyed playing it. So I'm going to pick Acropolis. I think my other friend, so I have 3 or 4 friends that we get together every week and play board games. I think he said that it's actually on Board Game Arena as well. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to go look. But Board Game Arena is a place where you can go play some of these games online. And yeah, it was fun. So I'm going to pick Acropolis, and I should probably put a link in the comments. And then for my other picks, let me just grab that link real quick for Board Game Geek, and then I'll grab a link for Amazon. The Amazon link's going to be an affiliate link, so I probably need to disclose that so that people know that I get a kickback for telling you to go buy it. But seriously, it's a fun game, so it doesn't cost you any more. Anyway, so the other thing that I've been doing lately is I've been doing. There's a mental toughness challenge called 75 Hard, and there's a program that comes after. You can do phase 1 and then phase 2 and then phase 3, and I just finished phase 1. So 75 Hard, you do 2 workouts a day, you read 10 pages out of a nonfiction book, you have to take a picture of yourself, you have to drink a gallon of water. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but phase 1 adds a 5-minute cold shower and 10 minutes of visualization to the mix, right? So you visualize what you want, where you're headed, all that stuff. Yeah. And it's been awesome. So anyway, I just finished phase 1. I'm going to start phase 2 pretty much the day after Thanksgiving. And then phase 3, you do the last 30 days leading into the day you started 75 Hard. And 75 Hard, so phase 1, 2, and 3 are all 30 days. 75 Hard is 75 days. Okay. And if you miss, you have to start over. Oh. So anyway, but yeah, I do so much better. Oh, you have to stick to a diet. That was the thing I forgot. So anyway, I'm going to pick that. If you want to learn more, the guy that did it, he had a show called MFCEO Project. Now it's Real AF, but it's in the archives, and I'll put a link in so you can get information on that. And then finally, my last pick is going to be Tailwind and Tailwind UI. So I've been kind of doing this overhaul on Top End Devs, and I had this habit of buying layouts on ThemeForest and then applying them to my website, right? Because my design skills are not awesome, right? It's like pick colors that go together. Yeah, right. So right. So anyway, I've been using Tailwind lately, and I paid for Tailwind UI, and I've been using it in some of my projects. And it's not as complete as I want, Tailwind UI, but there's enough there for me to figure out how to piece together what I want if they don't have something that is what I want. And so anyway, I've been really, really happy with that. And it's kind of all come back to the one-person framework we talked about before, where I don't have to go. I may go grab a designer at some point and say, hey, look, it all looks pretty white, right? What can I do to add some variety to this, right? So that it looks nicer. Yeah. But it looks fine, right? The way that it's going together. I've been pretty happy with it. And since I upgraded to Rails 7, yeah, I was able to get rid of Webpacker. I was able to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff that just complicated my life. And I can just pull in this other stuff that I need. And so I've been really, really, really happy with it. So I'm going to pick those. I'm a little late to the game on Tailwind. I tend to hear these things, hear a bunch of hype about stuff. And I'm like, okay, is it a fad or is it going to stay? Right. And in this case, it stayed. I actually talked to Adam Wathen at Rails World. He was one of the speakers, and we had us a good chat. So I'm trying to get him to come on the show. But anyway, great stuff. So Tailwind UI for sure. Agreed. How about you, Ben? What are your picks?
3 picks, huh? All right. So I'm going to go with the board game as well for my number 1, and I will go with Tsuro. Tsuro. It's
fun one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Oldie but a goodie. This is my family's go-to game whenever we're like, what do we want to do? We don't have anything planned. Let's play some Tsuro.
Ships.
Yeah, it's
that's the one, right? With the ships and the lanes.
I think there are multiple versions. We play the original version, which it's just paths. You lay down the tiles, so they're square tiles, and you lay down. Each tile has a different configuration of paths, and you move your little. start from the edge of the board, and the goal is to avoid being sent to the edge, another edge of
Right.
the board. Right?
Yep.
And so you lay down your path tile and you follow the path, and it's a lot of fun. And
It's a fun one.
you can be cooperative or competitive as you like. You know, you can try to avoid others or try to collide with them. It's great. It's a quick game, and you know, it can be as little as 2 players. So we love that. And
Yeah.
you know, this is
Suro is on Board Game Geek. It is weighted at 1.22. So it's a very easy game.
yeah, yeah, it's fun for the kiddos for sure.
Yeah.
Pick number 2. Well, I've been really into one of my hobbies is electric vehicles, and of all shapes and sizes. And my pick is a recently released electric motorcycle, the Livewire
Oh,
Del
interesting.
Mar. it's it's ridiculously high torque and super fast. It's about $16,000, I think. So it's not cheap as far as motorcycles go. But being electric, it's got instant torque and super high performance. And I love the whole performance thing. So I'm not a crazy racer by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, I love twisting the throttle and having things go. So gotta pick that for a fun pick.
Nice.
And I think I'll go with you on number 3, the Tailwind. That has been a pretty awesome thing. So we bought the Tailwind. I'll just add on to your pick. So not just Tailwind, but also Tailwind UI. So if you buy
Hmm.
into that set of stuff, which I can't remember how much it is, but I think there's still a
I
lifetime
think it was
license,
$300 for me
and
for
it's
a one
great.
person license. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have these ready-made components, and I did the same thing you did for years. Go to Theme Forest, grab a theme, and then
Yeah.
customize it, and then get frustrated because you know it's you're deep in the weeds
Yeah.
among CSS and all this kind of stuff.
Right. And the JavaScript libraries
Right.
aren't
Yep.
completely up to date. And yeah.
Exactly. And then you're frozen in time, like you can't ever upgrade
Yeah.
that thing, right?
Well, you can, but you've got to figure out all of the dependencies and
exactly. It's just yeah.
yeah. I
So
dealt with all that gross. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So so I will echo your pick for Tailwind and Tailwind components. It's Tailwind UI. It's great. Like you can mix and match. You can pull down these things. You can. It's easy to tweak because of the declarations that are in the HTML. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
see where that padding's coming from, or that shadow, and
Hmm.
etc. So yeah, I'll echo yours and go Tailwind.
Yep. Yeah. There were it had like a margin class or something that it goes like every second or every fourth one or something. So occasionally I actually have to get in and say, okay, I'm going to define the margin 3 or whatever. But
Uh-huh.
I mean, for the most part, it's been terrific, and the tooling on it is awesome. That's the one thing that I
Yeah.
like about it too, is that it effectively looks at my Rails app and says, you're using these classes, and it just drops all the rest of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're using it with ES Build, it is so nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just using it with Prop Chef now.
Okay. That's cool.
And so like it's not running it through ES Build or Webpack or anything. It
That's even
just
better.
builds it when I'm running it on the when I run the /dev/ or bin dev,
Mhm.
and it just stands it up. And so it updates it as I go. And then when I deploy it, it just does the it calls the Tailwind executable, and it just builds Tailwind for my app. And
Nice.
so I don't have to do anything else. It's really slick.
Oh, I got to do a bonus pick here.
Yeah.
Caddy, the web server. So if you're not familiar, it is a web server on the kin of Nginx or you know Apache even, but it's a more modern implementation, and it has I know that David and crew went with Traffic for their web server. And you know
Yes.
nothing against Traffic, but I love Caddy. It is a great
Yeah.
little web server, especially if you want to do dynamic certificates. It's just drop dead simple to proxy to a Rails app and have some SSL
Mhm.
certificates automatically generated for you. So if you haven't checked out Caddy, definitely do check it out. It's pretty sweet.
Nice. Yeah. The way that Kamal is set up, I don't see any reason why you couldn't just add Caddy as an accessory and just run it, because that's effectively what you wind up doing with your databases, Redis and Postgres is kind of, that's one thing I've been figuring out. The documentation, I have to admit, on Kamal is kind of slim.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to do the happy path, um, it's still kind of slim. Like there have been a few things that I was like, I thought this was just part of the happy path, and it's like, okay, I got to tweak stuff
Yeah,
to make it
yeah.
run. But yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't. If there's a Docker image up, that'll set it up for you and run.
Yep.
Because that's how they're doing traffic anyway.
Mhm.
Is it's just another container on your web server.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, it's good stuff. We love it.
yeah, good deal. All right. Well, it was great to catch up, Ben.
Yeah, same.
I'll encourage people to go check out Honey Badger.
Right on.
And until next time, folks, Max out.